two ways to get stronger. You can either increase your muscle mass, or what's termed, typically measured as cross-sectional area. So just bigger fibers, and this is hypertrophy. Or you can go about it via neural adaptations. So how the brain communicates with the muscle, how the muscles work nervously. Anaerobic power contributes to endurance too. You stay below 70% and you think, well, I'm not even using any of my type 2 fibers, but you actually are. And there's still some anaerobic and glucose utilization going on, even at low workloads. And anaerobic fibers aren't entirely anaerobic. Predominant is the word that's always used here because they're predominantly anaerobic, but your anaerobic fibers can contribute to highly aerobic work levels. They're still in play. So it's not really the worst thing to have plumper, type 2 fibers, those medium twitch and those fast twitch fibers, especially when it comes to those situations in a race where you need power. You can't just rely on endurance. You need to be able to push out some big watts for short periods of time.
Number one, I think in cycling, when you're talking about these big events, Nate mentioned this earlier, it's just too hard to recover from efforts like this. And so you're better off with consistency, as Chad said, targeting these specific systems and then making sure that you can recover consistently from them. And one of the things so the point is that you can actually handle a really, really high TSS one-day event doing a low volume plan that doesn't have the same level of TSS week after week. And one way of thinking about this is, your FTP, it's your functional threshold power. It's the power at which you can theoretically, effectively shuttle lactate really well. So if you think about your FTP as a metric for shuttling, it's not like you have a separate shuttling system for a 1 hour ride that's different from the shuttling system for a 3 hour ride that's different from a shuttling system for a 6 hour ride. It's all the same system. So if your FTP is at a level where you know that you can shuttle at this particular power output, it's the same thing for a 1 hour ride as it would be for an 8 hour ride. Now that's of course subject to your pacing strategy and how well you're fueling and staying hydrated, but shuttling is shuttling. So when you train that system, even if you're training that system at a low volume, it's there. It's there no matter how long you want to go for a ride or how long your event is. That said, there are other metrics of endurance, right? So the fueling I mentioned, that's going to be a really important one. It's not just about making sure you're fueling enough and consistently through the event, but also you have palate fatigue, focus. So just maintaining a mental focus and the mental fatigue associated with being on the bike for a really long time. And that's of course related to fueling. And then you did mention being in the saddle and that's its own special kind of endurance that we all know. But honestly, like all of these things, I think are very trainable on a low volume plan. And if you want to, if you toss in maybe a few longer rides where you sort of test what it's like to be in the saddle for 4 hours, maybe 5 hours, you don't have to go do 9 hours on the bike to prep for a 9 hour event though. So just, I think you can be confident that on a low volume plan, you can train effectively for a longer event. And if the low volume plan is the thing that you can do consistently and recover from and not get sick from and not get injured from, that is your absolute best bet for preparing for even a really, really big TSS event. But try timing your breathing with your cadence. So in sweet spot, you might breathe at a rate of, let's say, 30 times per minute. If you wanted to simulate a climb during a sweet spot interval and have like a really low cadence of, let's say, 60, then you'd be breathing every other pedal stroke. But then you can try mixing it up. Mix up your cadence, mix up your breathing rate, try alternating sides so you're emphasizing both left and right pedal stroke. We used to do this in swimming. We call it alternate breathing because if you only ever breathe at one side, you can get a little bit lopsided in terms of your form. But you can also try experimenting with noticing changes in your internal state. So does does slower breathing affect your mood, your anxiety level? If you notice that you're kind of have a lot of tension in your shoulders, does some belly breathing help you relax and bring that down again? And then shift between narrow focus. So that's internal, and then shift your focus out again to something external, like looking at the screen, looking at how your knees are tracking on the bike, picking a point on the wall. And then you can shift between narrow focus and broad focus. So narrow focus would be like, if you're on TrainerRoad, like focusing on that little yellow line, and then shifting back out to a broad focus. A broad focus, a way of doing this on the trainer would be just to try to imagine the shape occupied by the empty space in your room. which is kind of a funny mental exercise, but it's a way of opening your focus and broadening and softening that focus, and then shifting between that and then going back into a really narrow focus. And the whole time you're doing this, you want to keep tabs on your breathing. So keep counting your breaths, keep maybe breathing in time with your cadence, whatever that is. And then the other thing you can do is, instead of counting your breaths, you can always try substituting counting with a mantra and see if that helps, and experiment with different mantras. But these are all things that can help you tap into a good mental state that will then in turn help your performance. And the key is that the breathing is grounding you in that associative attentional focus state, which is super important. So all of this is the goal of this is not to like identify what your perfect sweet spot ventilation rate is. There's no such thing. There's no perfect rate of ventilation for any given effort. But what it's doing is it's just teaching you more about how to focus. So you're training that attentional focus, that skill set. You are learning how to modulate where you are on that sympathetic parasympathetic ladder with your breath. And the whole time you're doing this, you're training all of those muscles, just like Chad said. So it's kind of it's kind of like a nice all-in-one. And again, that sweet spot, those steady state efforts on the trainer are such a good time to try and just experiment with this.
So many people, I just saw somebody in the forum, they're new to TrainerRoad. Okay, I'm going to do sweet spot base high volume 1, sweet spot high volume 2. Like, if you've never done indoor structure training, it is a whole different world compared to outdoor riding. Even if you ride a whole bunch outdoors, just try one block on low volume, see how you do, then go to mid volume and see your compliance.
Totally.
And then when you start missing things, back it off. Rather than, I personally think when you start to like, I saw another YouTube video on this, and the person missed a whole bunch of workouts and stopped them short. Still had performance improvements, but I would say before you start like lowering every workout, where you like every day you're just like lowering it and ending every workout early, switch to a lower volume like mid volume or low volume. Get a recovery day and then hit your intervals on those other days.
Agreed, completely. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a common tendency, if you're new to it, to look at your current volume, and you alluded to this, but just to be very explicit with it, look at your current volume, look at the training plans, and in many cases, like a lot of people are like, well, then I should follow a high volume plan. But it's important to remember this is purely structured time.
Yeah, they're looking at
a different experience.
Probably exclusively hours, not necessarily the composition of the training. So they're maybe riding 8 hours a week, but they're just kind of noodling, doing a bit of tempo, riding, coasting the downhills, maybe even coasting some of the regular riding. And it's very different from what you'll encounter when you train indoors.
And you're probably not doing threshold for 20 minutes at a time.
And that's the other thing, the intensity and the quantity of the quality.
Chances are you have some sort of like bias in terms of what you see. Like if you were to actually have a full report on how much was structured in the ride that you did, of course, the structured portion sticks out in our mind. But when we kind of let all the other stuff melt away and we don't think about it, but when you look back, it compromises, or it composes a much smaller portion of our training time than we think if you're just riding outside. So I'm going to do a super quick recap of that. So first of all, sleep, get good sleep. 2, focus on whole foods and reduce the stuff that isn't necessary and probably isn't going to improve your performance when you're talking about nutrition.
Or your health, really.
Yeah, right. In terms of timing your food, make sure that you come into a workout with sufficient stores on board. Carb-centric meals are great before then and during when you're training on the bike and after. Then nail the low volume plan before you move up and start low, and then you can ride as much as you want on top of that, and then just start working in more structure as you can. Cooling, make sure you cool yourself enough. Make sure you have the entertainment that's right for the sort of intensity you're doing and also what you enjoy. Eliminate obstacles that stop you from getting on the bike, and then figure out things like caffeine and other substances that you take in like that.
The stages of recovery also apply perceptually, and I guess you could liken that to psychologically, in that they're still subjective. So, all the things that influence them on a physiologic level probably to some extent influence them on a psychological level. I see it as kind of a process you have to go through every time you reach your recovery week, in that the first day or 2 or 3, you're tired. I mean, you're obviously tired and nothing feels quite right. You have general body fatigue. You have like a malaise where nothing excites you or affects you the way it does. Food doesn't taste as good. I mean, there's so many things that can be likened to mild depression. And in some cases, it is in fact that. Your motivation's low. I mean, it's just this low point and you wonder, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? But couple of days later, you start to work your way out of it. And the next few days are this gradual return to normal. And this, I think, is the temptation, much like coming back from illness or injury, is where people jump into things too soon. They think, I'm ready to hit it again. I'm going to do it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't, though. So what I look for in me, especially since I'm not personally training anybody, but when I did train individual clients, was I wanted to detect some indication of an eagerness to return to training. It wasn't just that they could do the workout, or they kind of wanted to do the workout. I wanted like a visible joie de vivre. I wanted to see, an actual zest for life. I wanted them to want to train and to be excited about that prospect. That to me said, recovery has, run its course, and now is the time to up the load and get after it again.
Yeah, there's I remember a while back I was coming back from illness and was finally to a point where I was like, man, I can't wait to get on the bike again. And I said it out loud to my husband one day, and he goes, yeah, it probably means you need at least another day off. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, I mean, you really want to stoke the fire. You want to really continually keep that, that hunger and that enthusiasm, like you said, that joie de vivre. I think that's such a great way to put it and frame it, because it is so important. It's a really crucial component of training.
Yeah, and that what happens too is that doesn't always, to me, that's like Saturday or Sunday or sometimes even Monday of the recovery week when that comes back. It is definitely not Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, I'm like, I went way too deep. Like I should give up cycling all the time.
Right. Sorry for the barking dog in the background. Once again, we're all in this together, such as the time that we're in. So one thing to add to this too is that a lot of these feelings, I could see somebody listening to this and being like, hey, I feel like that not just in a recovery week. Sometimes I feel like that amidst like a training week. Like last week, for example, I had a huge amount of other training or other load in my life with getting a ton of yard work done. It's still going on, but maybe I've adapted. I don't know what the change is, but it was really tough. Like last week was really hard to go through and hit all my marks in training. And it was like over the weekend, I was just like, oh man, or coming into the weekend, I was like, I'm just not fast anymore. I'm like dropping down. Something's going on. Everything is wrong. I need to question everything. Right. And then once I made it through and I had a great ride on Saturday, I actually took the day off of structure and I went out and just rode my mountain bike. It had been a long time since I had done that, which in our local area, it's safe to do so and also legal to do so. And the place I picked was one where I wouldn't be overlapping with a lot of people. So I went through and did that and had a great ride and got a bit of that enjoyment of riding back. And man, like it's been killer. Like this week, my workouts have been so good. I've been like hitting all my marks. I'm eager to train. So sometimes even, this can happen in the middle of a training week. And it's really finding your way to do it. For me, it wasn't stepping away from structure. That's like the red herring. Really what it was just I needed to make sure that I was putting too much emphasis and freaking out too much on all the small things that were going on. And instead, I just needed to calm my mind down and do it. And having that day off and then having another one just helped a lot. Because I think a lot of the time we're good at sabotaging ourselves at not being successful at training.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm doing a high volume, short power, high volume build right now. And I was with a rider from Four Eyes. She's in charge. I forget what her exact title is, but really cool person. And she was saying she went to sleep and she had a negative mindset because she's like, man, I am so tired. My legs hurt, all of this, like I am too deep. And we talked about it. I said, no, that was after a really hard workout. The other mindset you could have is, wow, this is exactly what I want. Like I'm tired and my legs hurt going to sleep after a hard workout. I put it in there. I put the effort in. And I know that if I recover now and the next day was easier, that I'm going to be faster. And that's the kind of state I want to be in. If I've never in a tired state where my legs hurt, I'm probably not training hard enough, or I could probably get some more volume. And it's all about that mindset, right? Because one is yes, I'm doing it. This is perfect. Another is, oh my gosh, I'm panicking. I'm never going to be able to finish this training plan.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
That's it exactly.
Absolutely.
So that's why I said, I hesitate to even call it psychological so much as perceptual. It's how you want to look at it. It's how you interpret it, which, is psychological. But I think if you frame it as, I can perceive this any way I want to, then it makes it perceptual and maybe a little more relatable.